specifically triads in a minor key. Oh no, Adrian, not another triads lesson. Are you serious? Well, I'm afraid I am serious. I'm not going to apologise for doing another triads lesson. As I've said many times before, I think they're one of the most worthwhile things that you can be practicing and working on. I mean, obviously you want to know your basics first, so your kind of cowboy open chords. You want to know your basic bar chord shapes, major and minor, maybe the odd jazzy chord as well. But after that, I think triads are the obvious next step, and they're a way of coming to a deeper understanding of the fretboard and the way that the guitar works. And they're also a really practical tool. I'm using triads all the time to come up with rhythm guitar parts and also as a basis for improvisations and solos. Now, this video is intended as a companion piece to the video I did last year on major key triads. And I was thinking, well, is it worth doing the minor key version of that video? Because aren't minor keys just the same as major? You're really just starting from a different point and you can kind of figure it out as you go along, can't you? But then I thought, no, this is a worthwhile thing to do. I think too often, at least in theoretical terms, minor keys are an afterthought, and you spend a lot of time learning your major key theory and you're not so much on the minor key side of things. And for that reason, I think many guitar players are far weaker on minor keys and minor key theory than they are on major keys. So I want to put that right, and the format of this video is going to be the same as the previous video. So I'm going to start with some theory. There are going to be plenty of exercises. Some of them are going to be quite basic, some of them a bit more challenging, and then I'm going to talk about practical applications, so how you can use this stuff to come up with either rhythm guitar parts, or you can use this stuff as a kind of framework for solos and improvisations. So let's get started. I am going to be assuming just a little bit of prior triad knowledge. So if the concepts I'm talking about today are completely new to you, you might like to check out some of my earlier triad videos for some basic explanations. But today I'm going to be talking about triads in minor keys. So you've got a series of 7 triads available to you in every minor key based on the notes from the natural minor scale. And to start with, let's just take a look at a basic A minor triad and look at how that's constructed. So we've got our starting note, the root note, which is an A. Then we've got a note which is a minor third above that. So if we do it along the length of the low E string, just go up 3 frets, you've got a C. And then we've got another note which is a major third above that one, which is an E, so going up 4 frets. So that's an easy way to figure out the notes in any triad. You get your starting note and then go up 3 frets and then up 4 frets. That gives you a root, a minor third or a flat third, and a fifth. And you can play those notes any way you like on the fretboard. It's just A, C and E. Tons of options how you lay those notes out on the fretboard. But what I want to do is just build a series of triads on the top 3 strings, all of these triads belonging to the key of A minor. So our root notes are going to be on the 3rd string, so we can just start by playing an A minor scale along the length of the 3rd string. In the key of A minor, things are nice and simple, no sharps or flats, so we're just going to go A, B, C, D, E, F, G and A. That's our A minor scale. And then we can create these triads. You've got a set of 7 different triads which are diatonic to this key. It's a series of these little 3-note shapes. They all belong together. You can use them as the basis of chord progressions and in songwriting. And the way it works is we take our starting note and then we build these triads in thirds. So we're going up a third to the next note and then up a third to the next note. All of these notes have to conform to the notes within the scale. So if we start here with our A, then we go up a third, A, B, C, and then we go up from the C, C, D, E. That gives us our first triad. This is an A minor triad. We can call this the 1 triad. We're building it off of the first note in the scale. Then we can go to the second note in the scale, which is a B, and we're going to go up a third from that. So a B, a D, and then D, E, F. So B, D, and F. And we've actually got a diminished triad here. This quality of triad, this sound is forced on us by the nature of the scale, by the intervals in the scale. So the triad that you build off of the second note in a minor scale is always going to have this diminished sound. So that's a B diminished triad, and then we just continue the process. So we go up to a C, stacking those thirds, C, E and G. It's a C major triad, then we've got a D, and you find that the fourth note of the scale will give you a minor triad. It's a D minor triad, and then we just continue the process. E minor is the 5 chord, the 5 triad. We've got F major, G major, and then finally we're back to A minor again. So that's the first thing I want you to do. I want you to understand the theory and then just memorize this series of triad shapes. These are the specific triads in the key of A minor, but the pattern is going to be the same in any minor key. And as I alluded to at the start of this video, I really want you to think in terms of minor keys here. You might have noticed, but these triads are exactly the same triads that you will find in the key of C major. We're just starting at a different point. We're starting on the A minor triad, but that's reason for that is because these two scales, C major and A minor, are relative to one another, i.e. they contain the same notes but a different starting point, which is useful and important information, but it can be confusing, particularly if you're in the thick of making music and improvising. So far better just to think A minor straight away and memorize this series of triad shapes. You can number these triad shapes and you notice the patterns going on here. It's not hard to memorize this stuff. We've got 3 minor triads. We've got the 1 minor triad and then the 4 and the 5. So A minor, D minor and E minor. There are 3 major shapes. There's the major shape built off of the flat third, which is C major. We've got F major, which is built off of the flat 6. And then we've got G major, which is built off of the flat 7. And then we've got one further triad, which is the kind of the weird one. And this is the B diminished. This is built off of the 2 note, the second note in the A minor scale. That's the 7th note in the major scale. But as I say, these things are relative to one another. But I really want you to think minor straight away. Get used to thinking in these kind of terms rather than doing this whole laborious translation process from the relative major. Exercise number 1 then is just going to be to drill this chord scale, this triad scale up and down the fretboard. Just get these shapes flowing and under your fingers. So you can, once you're ready, just do this in time, perhaps with a metronome. I'm going to start down here with A minor. We've got... back down again. Just trying to keep everything nice and clean, nice and smooth. And you might want to play around with these shapes, play them in different orders, maybe come up with some little chord progressions. One exercise that I like to do is skipping thirds. So you start with the 1 triad, then go to the third one, then the second up to the 4th, and you've got a nice little exercise with a little bit more interest in it. So that sounds like this. And things to be aware of here, the root notes are super important. So you might just want to visualize those root notes. In the case of this particular scale, they're all going to be falling on the 3rd string. So you might just want to name those notes and name these triads as you're going up and down that scale. I think that can be quite a useful thing to do. And also just be super aware of the qualities of each of these triads. I've already talked about this. We've got the 3 minor triads, the 3 major triads, and then the diminished triad as well. You can, of course, try this stuff in other keys as well. But don't get overwhelmed by this information. Just learn it in one key to start with. But when you're feeling confident, you can just start and try doing it in another key. So just to give you an example, if I play this same triad scale in E minor, then I'm going to be starting on an E root note here. That's my 1 triad, and the order of these shapes is going to be exactly the same, so it's actually not a big deal to change key on the guitar, and that would look like this. We've got you can kind of lay this stuff out how you want to. You can go all the way up to the highest available triad. What I often do is when I get reasonably high up the fretboard, I'll just come down an octave just so sort of things fit a bit more comfortably under my fingers. But you know, up to you exactly how you approach this. Next, you might like to move this idea on to some of the other string sets. So on the guitar, we've got 4 sets of 3 adjacent strings. So strings 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5 and 6. We just played that triad scale on the top string set. We can do exactly the same thing on the next string set, so strings 2, 3 and 4. But because of the eccentric way that the guitar is tuned, the shapes are now going to be slightly different. So let's look at how that would work. We're now going to have our root notes and our A minor scale on the 4th string. So the lowest available root note on the 4th string is going to be this A at the 7th fret. And then we've got our A minor scale. And we're just going to build our triads off of those notes. Theory stuff is exactly the same. So we've got our root note, then we've got the flat third above that and the 5th. So A, C and E. Notice the shape is now slightly different. We've got 7th fret, 5th fret and then 5th fret. That's our 1 chord, our 1 triad. Then we've got our diminished triad, so frets 9, 7 and 6, and then we just continue on up the scale. We've got C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, come down an octave there if you like, and then we're back home again to A minor. So that's our triad scale on the next string set. And you could continue the process and do it on the remaining 2 string sets. And just in the interest of keeping this video reasonably concise, I'm not going to show you that stuff on screen. It's something that you should be able to work out for yourself. The notes are going to be exactly the same. The theory is going to be exactly the same. So you just need to find your notes along the length of the 5th string or the 6th string and then find those intervals on top of that. I am of course going to be tabbing out all of this information, going to put that up on my Patreon page for those of you who would like to have that stuff. Let's invert. Now up to this point we've just been dealing with root position triads, so triads where the root note has been the lowest note in each of these shapes, but we've got a couple of other options here. We can just kind of play around with the order of the notes. So we've got first inversion triads, and that just means that the 3rd is now going to be the lowest note in each of these shapes. So if we start from our A minor root position triad, we've got A, C, E. The way I think about it is if you take that A note and put it on top, then the order of the notes is going to be C, E and A. You could play that at the 5th fret here on the guitar on the top string set. So now in terms of the intervals, the note functions, we've got the 3rd, the 5th, the root is now on the top string. That's an A minor triad, still an A minor triad, but you can talk about it as being in the first inversion with the C as the lowest note. And once we've got that, we can play our triad scale, our diatonic scale, once again using these first inversion triad shapes. So this is our 1 triad. Next we're going to have the diminished triad, which is going to be B diminished, but it's inverted. So now the order of the notes is going to be a D, an F and a B. So with all of these shapes, the root note, the all-important root note, is now going to be on the top string. So important to visualize that really clearly. That's our 2 shape. Then we've got the major shape, C major. These frets 9, 8 and 8. D minor, the 10th fret, moving that up to an E minor. And then we've got F major, G, and then we're back to A minor again. So the triads in exactly the same order. We've just got these first inversion shapes now. So that will be another little scale drill that you can practice and get under your fingers. Let's invert once again, and you can make the 5th the lowest note. You could think about it like this. If we take our first inversion triad, which is C, E and A, we can take the lowest note again, put it on top. We would have E, A and C. You could play that here on the guitar, so 9, 10 and 8. This is, it's like that sort of open position D minor chord. playing it up here. This is another A minor triad. This time it's in the second inversion, so meaning the fifth is now the lowest note. So we've got the fifth, the root, and then the third, the minor third here. So with this series of shapes, the root note is now going to be in the middle. So in the case of this string set, it's going to be on the second string, and we can play another one of these scales. So we've got A minor. The B diminished is going to look like this. So frets 10, 12, and 10. And then we've got C major, that's that familiar kind of D grip. And then we've got D minor, E minor, and I'm just going to come down an octave here for F, G, and then A minor. So another little scale which you can drill. This is second inversion A minor scale played in triads. So and you can of course do that on the other string sets as well. And again, in the interest of just keeping this video reasonably short, I'm not going to show you all of that stuff right now, but if you understand these concepts, it will actually be a really good exercise just to take these ideas onto the remaining string sets and play those scales using the first and second inversions. Again, this info will be on the Patreon page should you need it. Now, armed with this triad knowledge, one of the great things that you're going to be able to do is find any chord that you need in any given zone of the fretboard, so in any position on any string set, and you've got all of these creative options, and that's really the whole point of working on this stuff. So one exercise to help get you there, which I really like, is to play this scale in a single position on the guitar. So rather than running up and down the train tracks of these string sets, you can find all of these shapes in a single position, and that's going to force you to mix and match these different inversions. So you'll need to switch between root position, first and second inversion shapes. So let me just demonstrate how that would work if we try and play that scale in this zone of the fretboard. So in and around the fifth position, you're going to need to move a little bit either way of the fifth fret here, but you can stay more or less in the same zone of the fretboard. We can start with this A minor shape in the first inversion, and then I'm going to go to the B diminished in the same inversion. Then I'm going to switch. So next we're going to need the C major. So I'm going to go root position, C major, root position, D minor, and then I'm going to go to E minor, but in the second inversion. So it's our E minor shape here, and then we're going to need F again in the second inversion, and then G, first inversion, back to A minor in the first inversion. So see how we're playing the same scale but moving between different inversions just as a way of staying in the same zone of the fretboard. So let me just play that one more time. We've got and it's a very economical way of playing. You don't need to shift up and down the fretboard, and it also gives you a very smooth sound as well. You haven't got big interval leaps between these triad shapes, and that can often be a very advantageous musical thing if you're coming up with guitar parts. And you can try that same exercise in a couple of other places. So starting maybe here with this second inversion A minor shape, and we can play our triad scale like this. And then we've got one more possibility here, so we could start with our root position A minor shape up here. And again, if you dare, you could try and do this stuff on the other string sets as well, but please don't feel overwhelmed by all of this information. Just take this stuff, one thing at a time, one exercise at a time, and it can be a long-term project to get all of this stuff together and to deepen your understanding of these materials. Let me talk about how you might actually use this stuff to make actual music, and it really is a super useful thing, and you can use this approach wherever you've got a minor key song or minor key chord progression. And one thing I should mention is that minor keys can be a little bit more complex than major keys. You've actually got some more harmonic options. You don't just have one minor scale, you've got several. So you could include the harmonic minor, the melodic minor, perhaps the minor modes as well, the Dorian mode, for example. So you've got some more harmonic options in there. One thing that's very common is you come across a major 5 chord in a minor key. That's super common, and it just gives you that kind of 5-to-1 resolution. It will be major or a dominant 7/5 chord. So that's something to be aware of, something you might want to practice as well, including that major 5 triad, even though you're in a minor key. And a nice and musical way to practice these materials would just be to choose a minor key chord progression and then put it down on a looper or use a backing track, and then come up with some stuff over the top of that. And it could be some rhythm guitar ideas, or you could just do some simple melodic triad based improvising. And that was what I was trying to do at the top of this video. I just had a little backing track with a simple chord progression. I started off with a bit of a rhythm guitar part, and then I developed into a little bit of a melodic improvisation or solo. So let me just take you through what was going on there. And the chord progression I was using, key of A minor, and it was a very simple chord progression. It was just A minor, going to F, and then D minor, and then G. So the harmony there, the A minor is obviously the 1 chord, then we've got an F chord. This is the chord built off of the 6th, the flat 6th degree of the minor scale. That's going to be a major chord. And then we've got D minor, which is the 4 chord, and then G is the flat 7 chord. So it's just a simple 4 chord loop. So I laid down a little backing track, and the first thing you might do is just use some triads to outline those chords, just a very simple rhythm guitar part. So I think I started off with an A minor triad up here, just some nice long sustaining triads. So this is where you need to know your inversions so you can find this stuff on any given string set, and in a nice kind of a register you can choose. You've now got the options, how high or how low you play this stuff, and where you play this stuff is going to be determined by what works for the song. So what else is going on at the time in the song, what other instruments are there, whether someone's singing over the top of it, and then you can find your place in the arrangement. So I was just playing A minor triad here, like first inversion, then switching to the closest available F triad there. So this is where the knowledge of these inversions is really useful. I'm just changing 1 note, making that E and F. Now I've got this F major triad, 2, 3, 4. Then I've got D minor, and then G. And you can really take that wherever you want to. And you can have these triad shapes descend, ascend. You can create a little part. You have a little melody that's the top note of each of these triad shapes. I could take it onto the higher string set perhaps. So and you could introduce a little bit of rhythm perhaps, or you could arpeggiate some of these triad shapes. So loads of options. And then if you wanted to do more of a solo, more of a single note kind of thing, you can still use these triad shapes as the basis of your note selection. It's a little bit of a misconception that triads are just this kind of rhythm guitar thing, but I'm certainly thinking in terms of triads quite a lot of the time when I'm playing single notes. So at the start of this video, I think I was just thinking about A minor, F, D minor, and G, and I'm just playing the notes in those triads one after the other. It's quite a simple concept really. So very, very simple. That was just playing the notes from low to high. But you mix up the order of the notes. So quite easy then to make things sound a bit more musical. You don't want this stuff to sound like a triad exercise. So mix up the order of the notes introduce a bit of rhythm and a bit of expression as well. So some bending, some vibrato. And of course, you don't have to stick just to the notes in the triads. The triads are going to give you the chord tones, so the really strong notes. But very often I'm going to be embellishing the triads and adding in some other notes as well. So there's my A minor triad. I might include the B there, which is the second, or the G, which is the flat 7. Suddenly it doesn't sound quite so triady, and you can do that to any of these shapes. So yeah, it can sound quite melodic there. I'm still essentially thinking triads there, but I'm adding in extra notes. You can use your ear to guide you to those extra notes, but generally speaking they're going to be other notes from the scale, so they're all going to be diatonic notes or notes from the key. And make sure you add some expression, do some guitar type stuff with these triads, so vibrato, slides. I think I was adding in some bending with the triads as well. So got an A minor triad, you might like to do some bending. So there I'm just bending the A up to a B, so the root up to the second. On the F triad, bending the C up to the D, so bending up to the 6. So I really like that sound. So coming out of this minor triad shape here, so bending the D up to the E, getting that kind of sus sound on the G, bending up to the 4th and then back down to the 3rd. So suddenly it doesn't sound like a kind of dull triad exercise, suddenly it sounds like actual music. So I hope you've got some food for thought there, some ideas to play around with. Okay, well let's leave it there for today. I hope you found this video interesting, and I'm aware that there's a lot of information in this video. I'm not expecting you to digest all of this information in 20 minutes, particularly if a lot of this stuff is new to you. So it's just something to be working on gradually. It's a video you might want to bookmark and then come back to over a period of weeks and months. And as I think I said in the previous video, triads are not just this thing you work on for a couple of weeks and then tick off the list before moving on to something super advanced. I think triads are something you should always be working on. It's really just the essence of what the guitar fretboard is all about, and you should be often revisiting these concepts and deepening your understanding of these ideas. Now, if you would like tab and backing track, it's going to be up on the Patreon page. I'm going to write out all of the examples in this video, and you can also have a go at playing along over the backing track that I played over at the start of the video. So yeah, those are on the Patreon page. Pay what you like, get access to those. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.